Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning into the latest UK general election prediction video from the Gavin Partridge YouTube channel. So once again, we are going to be going through the prediction from Electoral Calculus that was released at the end of August, and we will be having a look at the opinion polls that prediction for the next UK general election is based upon. We will be showing you how the government's overall approval rating is looking. I've got some historic data to show you as well for this, a little bit differently. We will be showing you how the opinion polls were looking before previous change elections, because of course if this election is a change election in that the government is going to be changed, then it will go along with the other change elections that we've had over the past 40 years or so, which will be 1979, 1997 and 2010. So I shall get on that for you in a moment, just to say that if you're enjoying the videos on the channel at the moment, I know I don't get a chance to upload enough of them. I'm always very busy doing the day job, which is the weather channel, Gaz Weathers. But if you are enjoying what we are able to upload on this channel, then please do like, share, and subscribe. As the general election gets closer, I will be doing these videos more frequently. Actually, in the general election, I'll probably do daily videos through the through the general election, because best opinion polls release most days during a general election. So during the election itself, I will probably release a daily video towards the end of the day, looking at that day's opinion polls and data, if you like. But of course, that's some way off. The election won't be or can't be any later than January 2025. It'd be unlikely, but we're going to be trudging to the polls in January, I would have thought, although we did have a December election 2019, so never say never. But I would assume like summer or autumn 2024 is most likely, so probably about 12 months away, I would think, from like a general election. I would say October probably of 2024 is most likely. I don't know if it's a Thursday the 17th, so I might even have next year I might even have a general election on my birthday, Thursday the 17th of October. That would be a birthday to remember. But whatever it is, we're going to be doing more of these videos, so if you could please like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much everybody for doing that. Right, okay, let's have a look then at the prediction from Electoral Calculus for September 2023. This release at the end of August, of course. So in 3, 2, 1, boom! There we go. And the current prediction is for a Labour landslide majority of 178 seats. So that is actually down by about 100 compared to the prediction last month. It is still a landslide, but last month Electoral Calculus was showing a Labour majority of 278 seats. This month they're showing a Labour majority of 178 seats. So obviously through the past month, during August, there was a slight swing from Labour to the Conservatives, but still Labour within a landslide majority territory. Could the polls be starting to narrow a little bit, though, as we head towards the end of the Parliament? Normally there is a swing back to the government as you get towards the final stages of the Parliament, but more about that later on in the video. Right, so let's go through the numbers then. So these are party contrasts here: Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrats, Reform, Greens, SNP, Plaid. We've got 2019 votes and seats tabled just here. So obviously it was a very big result for the Conservatives, a landslide majority of around 80 seats. Well, the current prediction, we see the Conservatives on 27.5%, which gives them a predicted seat score of 159 seats. Labour on 44.3% of the vote, which gives them a predicted seat score of 414 seats, which is very close to the 1997 result, actually. And Liberal Democrats on 26 seats with 10.8% of the vote. Reform on nearly 7%, but they struggled to get a seat. That's first past the post, of course. And we've got the Greens on 5.6%. They only have 1 seat. SNP on 3.7%, they get 28 seats. And they've got the others down here. Now, of course, there is a margin of error within that. So at the low end, the Conservatives could go down to 59 seats, virtually wipe out for them. That would be absolutely catastrophic if that happened. At the high end, they could be as high as 261 seats, which I think, based on what's been going on over the past year or two for the Conservatives and the opinion polls we've seen over the past 12 to 18 months, they would be very happy, I would have thought, if they could come away with 261 seats at the next election. For Labour, they could go as low as 310, which is interesting because now at the low end of the margin for error, Labour actually don't get a majority, so they've got to get to 326 to get a majority. So at the low end, Labour now are in hung parliament territory. But that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on that low end score, to see whether that continues to fall. At the high end, though, they could be as high as 517 seats, which would be an absolutely phenomenal result for them and will give them the greatest or biggest landslide they've ever seen in British political history. The Liberal Democrats on 12 seats at the low end, 49 seats at the high end. Brexit on no seats at the low end, 1 seat at the high end. Greens on 1 seat at the low end, 2 seats at the high end. SNP could get 46 seats at the high end and 11 seats at the low end. That would be a really terrible result for the Liberal for the SNP if that happened. Applied on 4 seats in their central prediction, 5 at the high end and 3 at the low end. Once again, of note in the Liberal Democrats, so you can see that the predicted vote of vote score of 10.8% is actually 1% lower than they did in the 2019 general election, where they got 11.8% of the vote. They got 11 seats, but now they're being predicted to get 26 seats. That tells us, as I've explained in previous videos, that tactical voting is back. So that is Labour voters voting tactically for the Liberal Democrats in Conservative seats where the Liberal Democrats are the main challengers, that particularly down across southern parts of England, of course, in the leafy shires. So tactical voting is back, and that does have an element of uncertainty. So like for the Liberal Democrats, they might be higher than the central prediction, I think. Maybe not as high as 49, but they might be higher than the central prediction, perhaps in the 30s, given tactical voting seems to be well and truly back in the ascendancy. But a Labour majority of 178 seats, as I said, it's very close to the 1997 Tony Blair landslide election. So this is all the opinion polls, or these are all the opinion polls of that prediction is based upon through August 2023. You can see we continue to see a sea of red here. All opinion polls have Labour in the lead. So let's go through a few of them, shall we? So we start off with Techney, this one just here, giving Labour a 20% lead, 26% Conservatives, 46% for Labour. A smaller Labour lead is Opinium, just here, 14% for them, gives the Conservatives 26% and Labour on 40%. A big Labour lead, but we see there is this one, Omnisys. They've tended to give Labour the largest leads of all the pollsters, with Labour on 24% in terms of the lead. They get 48% to Conservatives, 24% of the vote. Just there, we've got 25% here from DeltaPoll, 25% lead for Labour, and Labour on 50% of the vote. So that's a milestone to be at 50%. Is again half of all voters. That's very, very significant. It's been a long time since any party won a general election with 50% of the vote. I think you have to go back, probably, not sure, but you probably have to go back certainly to the 1950s, maybe to the 1930s for the last time the party won an election with half of all voters voting for them. Conservatives on 25% in that opinion poll. Going further upwards, we've got BMG. They don't poll all that often, but they find Labour on with a 15% lead, Labour on 44%, Conservatives on 29%. YouGov, you have a reliable YouGov gave Labour an 18% lead. Conservatives are down as low 26%. With that poll, Labour on 44%. The final poll of the month was Opinium. They tend to have the lowest Labour leads, and again, we see a 14% lead with Opinium. Labour on 42%, Conservatives on 28%. DeltaPoll, quite interesting just here, because that gets the Conservatives to 30% of the vote, which many of the polls you'll see, or nearly all the polls, don't get to the Conservatives to 30%. Conservatives are generally under 30% with most of the polls at the moment. DeltaPoll does get them to 30%. 16% Labour lead overall because they are on 46%. But psychologically, 30% is important for the Conservatives, I think, because that's what they got in 1997. It's still a wipeout election, but they did manage still to pull off 30% of the vote. It's grim times still for the Conservatives. There has been a slight narrowing of the lead, as we see there with the prediction going from a majority of 278 seats to 178 seats. But overall, still very grim times for for the Conservative Party. This is how the overall opinion poll graph is looking. We see quite a large lead still from the Conservatives to Labour. So Conservatives still generally pegged back under that all-important 30% mark. Labour still above 40%, somewhere between 14 and 50%. So probably about 15% lead overall for the Conservatives to Labour Party. No, probably a little bit more than that. Probably about 18%, I would have thought. It's somewhere between 15 and 20%, I think, the Labour lead during August 2023. So how does that compare to previous change elections? So this is how the opinion polls look for the October 1974 to May 1979 Parliament. This is the time before the change election that swept Mrs Thatcher into power. So in the last year of the Parliament, from 1978 to 1979, we actually, through most of it, saw a significant narrowing of the polls back to the Labour government. So you'll notice that through the middle part of the Parliament, through 1976, especially 1977, we get a large Labour Conservative lead, I should say, large Conservative lead over Conservatives. Labour generally down in the low 30s, Conservatives generally up in the mid to high 40s, not all that far from 50%. Sometime towards the end of 1977, a narrowing of that lead occurs. A swing back to the government starts to take place. Conservatives still generally holding a very small lead through most of 1978, but towards the end of the year, towards the autumn of 78, there is virtually crossover between Labour and the Conservatives, which is quite interesting. And there was a lot of speculation in the autumn of 1978 about whether Prime Minister Jim Callaghan would call an election, because if he had have done, it was always a big what if, that of British politics. If he had have done, maybe he would have deprived the Conservatives of the majority. He might not have won the election with a majority, but he might have, there might have been a hung parliament or something, and he might have been able to deal with the Liberals. Anyway, at the end of 78 into 79, of course, we get winter of discontent, so then the Conservative lead lifts back up again, and 1979, drawing towards the general election, see quite a significant Conservative lead. But during the election itself, actually, there is a swing back to the government again, as the Conservative lead does a little bit of a bungee jump. Actually, falls quite significantly through the general election campaign. The Labour lead ticks up a little bit. So that change election did have a swing back to the government in the year before the general election. This is another change election. This is 1997. So this is before the Tony Blair landslide that will sweep away the Conservative government. Again, we've got, so there's more opinion polls, of course, back then. So we can see about, I would say, like, the year before is somewhere starting around there, so that's October 1995. So you will think January 1996 would be somewhere there. No, probably not quite that far. So probably about here would be where January 1996 would be, and that's where the general election takes place, just there, really. So again, we can see that there is once more quite a significant narrowing. This is actually where the election ends up. You know, that's where the result is. Labour in the low 40s, Conservatives hovering around 30%, the Liberal Democrats in the upper teens. Of course, there was a lot of tactical voting in that election. You'll notice that through that last year, the Conservative score does lift up a little bit from like earlier in the Parliament. So earlier in Parliament down here in the mid-20%, eventually through 96 into 97, it does get back to somewhere around the 30% mark. So there is a little bit of a swing back to the government. Labour looked quite static, but I think there's a little tick down for Labour that becomes more obvious during the general election, actually. So during the election itself, we do see the Labour score dropping a little bit there, and the Conservative score ticking up a little bit. Wasn't enough, of course, to prevent a massive landslide, but we do see that during the last year of the Parliament, there is probably a little bit of a swing back to the government, but less convincingly so than in the 1979 example. And then this is the last time we had a change election, and this is in 2010, so this is how the 2005 to 2010 Parliament looks. This was when the Conservatives and David Cameron came back to government, and Labour were voted out. So again, you can see that through the middle part of the Parliament, particularly, so this is when Tony Blair's in power, just here in 2006. And remember, Conservatives did have a narrow lead, quite a slight lead. That actually crossed over briefly during the summer of 2007, during that washout summer of 2007, when Gordon Brown became Prime Minister. For a couple of months, Labour actually went back into the lead. But then from October 2007, when Gordon Brown didn't call an election, after there had been a lot of speculation that he would call an election, we saw Labour starting to drop, Conservatives starting to rise. And then, of course, we get financial problems during 2008 and 2009, and that really signals the end of the Labour government. So you can see that through most of 2008 and 2009, the Labour Party, you know, is well under 30%. Conservatives are between 40 and 50%. 2008. That narrows a little bit through 2009. Remember, there was the expenses scandal that affected all parties. Actually, the Conservatives did take a little bit of a hit in 2009, just here during the expenses scandal. But it was Labour still, but really got it in the neck, because they have been in government for quite a few years and allowed the system to develop, of course. Now, we did see a swing back, though, to the Labour government through early 2010. So it took a while for it to become obvious, but you can actually see from around the very lowest point for Labour, which was like July 2009, the trend line for Labour does lift up very, very gradually, and the Conservative trend line does drop very, very gradually. It becomes more obvious from around here, I think, which is like January 2010, that's when we see a more obvious narrowing of the polls. This is during the election itself, of course, just here. And you remember we had the first TV debate, and that really caused the Liberal Democrats to upset the apple cart when who was the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Clegg, when he appeared in the first TV debate with Cameron and Brown, and that really upset the apple cart, you know. And for a while, for a few polls, actually, it looked like the Liberal Democrats might replace Labour, you know, as the second party, but that wasn't to be. Of course. Nevertheless, back to the swing back idea. So yes, we do see a narrowing of the Conservative lead there heading into the general election, although for the election itself, they did win with quite a decent lead, so they're somewhere in the mid-30s. Labour were around 30%, so they had about a 6-7% lead, I think, and the Liberal Democrats actually didn't poll as well as it looked like they would do during the earlier phase of that general election. So, in all three examples, there is a swing back from the opposition to the government at some point within the last year of the Parliament, and particularly through, the months leading up to and over the general election, you do tend to see that there will be a swing back to the government. But just because that happens, it wasn't enough in all three examples to prevent a change. It wasn't enough to stop the change of government from happening, and that could well be the case this time. We might see, what's the trend line? We might, in the end, see Labour, falling a little bit. Over the next year, you might see the Conservatives rising a little bit. But in the end, it probably, because the gap is so large, and, it's even larger, of course, back around this time last year, because the gap is so large, in the end, it probably won't be enough to prevent the government from being changed. I think the gap has got too big from Conservatives to Labour for the Conservatives to be able to prevent a change of government. What the Conservatives might be able to do, though, is prevent Labour from having an overall majority. People forget that it is quite a tall order for Labour to get a majority, reason being that they did so badly in the 2019 election. So they went down to 203 seats, which was actually their lowest seat score since the 1935 general election. So to be able to get a majority within one election cycle would be, historically very, very impressive for the Labour Party. And based on the polls we see at the moment, they are easily doing that. But if there is going to be a swing back from Labour to the Conservatives during the final year of this Parliament, as we have seen in the previous three examples of change elections, then the government, the Conservative Party, might be able to prevent Labour from getting an overall majority. So that's what I think they're going to be aiming for, more than getting a majority of their own. Of course, if we do end up with a hung Parliament, it's still very likely that Labour will form the next government, because the Conservatives will not be able to find coalition partners unless there is a big, a big seat tally for reform or something, which seems very unlikely. So the Conservatives won't be able to do a deal with the Liberal Democrats, they won't be able to do a deal with the Greens, they won't be able to do a deal with the SNP. So even if there's a hung Parliament, it is very, very likely that Labour will form the next government. That's Keir Starmer will be the next Prime Minister. It just depends whether they will be relying on other parties to support his government, either through a coalition or through some kind of confidence and supply arrangement, or whether he will be able to form a majority government, in his own right, which is what I'm sure he is very keen to do. I'm sure he doesn't want to be relying on other parties and whatnot. But in the end, the numbers will be what the numbers will be, and we'll have to wait and see how it works out. The last thing to look at is government approval. So this is from YouGov, the latest tracker. And again, as of the 4th of September, the government extremely unpopular, really plumbing the depths of unpopularity. The government, 69% disapproving of the government. We still see the people that are approving of the government at 13%, under the don't knows 18%. As I keep explaining, that is always a very bad sign when government approval is under the people who don't actually know if they approve the government or not. So it all looks like people have made up their mind, really, that they want to change the government. The two unknowns about all of this is, let's go back to the prediction, the two unknowns about all of this is whether we are going to see a swing back to the government in the final year of Parliament. We probably will, because that normally does happen during the last year of the Parliament. And whether that will be enough to prevent a Labour majority, or whether it will force a hung Parliament. But to be honest, whichever way you cut it, it looks as though we're going to be changing the government in 2024. But we shall see. You know, I could be completely wrong about all of that. That's my sort of cards on the table prediction at the moment, based on, you know, historical precedents and whatnot. But similar to the weather, I suppose, every election is unique and has a life of its own. There is the 1992 example, which we might have a look at that in another video, you know, that parliament, in terms of the opinion polls and what happened there. Famously, the polls were predicting that Labour would form the government, and actually the Conservatives under John Major managed to hang on. So we might have a look at that in another video. But to be honest, at the moment, to me, it's looking like we're going to change government next year. But we shall see. Right, it's been a long video, bits. I hope you've enjoyed it. A little bit different, looking at that historical data. So if you have enjoyed, please do like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much, everybody, for doing that. And we'll be back with another prediction from Electoral Calculus and loads of polling data for you next month in October. There's going to be another video coming up at some point this month looking at the latest Ipsos MORI tracker, and that will be comparing personal ratings between Starmer and also Sunak, and that will be coming up at some point, hopefully later on this month. Right, so we'll stop it there. Thank you so much for watching, and bye for now. We'll see you again with more very soon. Bye for now.